Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another discussion video. Today I want to talk to you guys about my top projected meta picks for the beginning of the set 14 Cross Spirits format. We're going to talk about the decks that I think are going to reign supreme, at least for the beginning of the format, if not most of the format. So with that being said, guys, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys want to help support the channel, there are many ways down in the description to do so. But if you're looking to make that competitive leap, trying to read the meta better, trying to get more competitively minded, check out the Patreon down in the description. You can read the articles there, see where my head's at competitively, as well as inquire about some coaching if you are interested in that. Anyways, let's get into the video. We'll be going color by color, and right now we'll be starting with black. So I've voiced my opinions on this over the past several weeks since we've known what the ban list is going to consist of and what set 14 is going to consist of, and I don't really think the ban list does anything to dethrone Vegex or Dark Broly. As we know, Vegex is seeing a nerf to where it only mills 3 cards on both sides as opposed to 5 cards, and Dark Broly is seeing an errata where it can only use a 30k battle card for a combo once per turn instead of unlimited times per turn. And yes, those are power nerfs, but there's just nothing else in black that, at least from my experience, dethrones these two powerhouse decks. They still do insanely strong stuff for free, and a lot of the restrictions in set 14, at least for the black decks in that set, have Spirit Boost, which honestly is a lot of times going to act like a crutch that's going to prevent you from being able to enact your strategy if you're not able to get a Unison online. These decks are just way less restrictive even with the nerfs, but that doesn't mean I think these are the only black decks that are going to do well in set 14. I do actually have a few honorable mentions. I don't think these strategies will be as strong as Vegex or Dark Broly, but I do think they'll have a place in the meta. So firstly, starting with Mass Saiyan Reboot, I do think it's a strong deck. I do think it's a relatively aggressive deck. It's definitely fairly balanced in the sense that on the Unawakened side, it does not draw cards on attack. So that, of course, is a little bit of a weakness. But yeah, the Spirit Boost here, as with all the strategies, I'm probably going to do a whole video talking about the issues of Spirit Boost. You know, I talked about some preemptive issues of Spirit Boost just a few weeks ago, but now that I've really tested the set over the past several weeks, there are a lot of glaring problems with Spirit Boost, and I think that those types of strategies are going to be severely held back to the stronger decks that don't have such a restriction. That's going to be a common theme of the video today. But anyways, I do think Mass Saiyan Reboot is particularly strong, just not as strong as Vegex or Dark Broly because a lot of the restrictions that are imposed on the leader and the main deck cards themselves. I do think Mechikabura is okay. The deck was never particularly OP as a black strategy, and it was hanging in there sort of with like Vegex and Dark Broly, but I don't think that the nerfs of Vegex and Dark Broly make Mechikabura all that much better, mostly because Mechikabura is a slower black strategy. Most black strategies are very fast, aggressive, beatdown types of decks. Mechikabura doesn't really start doing much until turn 4 and beyond, and yes, it does have a really good floodgate in the form of a topo like Poutine, which is quite nice. But there is also a negate coming out for every single color that helps you deal with Mechikabura. So if Mechikabura was ever to really like rise up in the meta, there's a side deck card that every single deck in the game can play that essentially just dumpsters Mechikabura, which is pretty unfortunate. So I think Mechikabura will be okay. I think if you choose to play it, it'll be fine, but I don't think it's going to be better than most other black strategies you're talking about. And here's an interesting one. I do think Hatchiyak is going to see a lot of experimentation at the very least in the beginning of the format, and that's because the new SS4 Gogeta support in set 14 doesn't really have a true home, and it's tough to play a black card like that or a black strategy like that because, again, like I said, most black strategies are very aggressive, are very, you know, free play oriented. So actually casting 4 for a boss monster is going to take a very specific type of deck. Once again, Mechikabura can do it because Mechikabura has a topo like card that floodgates the opponent out of attacking, but like Gogeta Xeno or Vegex or Dark Broly don't exactly have cards like that. So Hatchiyak has it built into the leader where you can limit your opponent's aggression, and then you can kind of safely make it a turn 4, play that SS4 Gogeta. So I think that's going to be the most popular strategy for this type of deck. But yeah, these I do think they're going to kind of sit a level below Vegex and Dark Broly, but time will tell. I think people are going to have a lot of mixed opinions on this, so definitely in the comments below what you guys think about it. But anyways, we're moving on to red. With red, I really think King Vegeta is just the best red deck, hands down. King Piccolo definitely sat above King Vegeta in the set 13 format, but we know now that Drum is being limited to 1, and I don't exactly have solidified opinions on King Piccolo. I'm gonna have to see it more in action. I do think the deck can still be good, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be that top red spot anymore. I do think that goes to King Vegeta. It's just hyper aggressive. It's got all the great red defense that red's able to play, and it doesn't really lose out on anything for being aggressive because a lot of that defense is cheap or free. So with that in mind, I do have other red decks that I think are going to be good, not just King Vegeta. Like, King Vegeta is not going to be the only playable red deck in the meta. Let's take a look at some other ones. So again, I did mention how King Piccolo, I'm not exactly sure what I'm thinking about it. It's definitely not going to be as powerful as it was in set 13. I think there's still potential though, but I do really think that whenever we get some future support for King Piccolo, as long as they print another Demon Clan that you can combo from the light that does something relatively decent, I think King Piccolo can make a really easy comeback. Because what's crazy about King Piccolo and why I needed to be addressed on the ban list is that you get to free play a battle card every single turn, and the deck draws an insane amount of cards. That's why I was pushing for the piano ban, just to like allow King Piccolo to do its thing and play a lot of battle cards at the cost of having a decent hand size. Like, you should have a lower hand size if you're spamming battle cards to the board constantly, in my opinion. But anyways, that doesn't matter. King Piccolo, again, not exactly sure it's going to be all that great. Launch was really good in set 12, at least in the beginning of set 12, but I think Launch and King Piccolo started to fill a similar role in terms of like a defensive red mid-range deck. But now that King Piccolo is being nerfed in set 14, I think Launch does have room to step up. So I think some you know, red green, blue red, and possibly some tricolor variants of Launch can make a comeback once again, now that King Piccolo is probably not just going to be the default best red mid-range deck. Talking about the two guys on the right though, Broly was in a red aggro deck that was essentially just completely untouched on the ban list, where a lot of people were expecting maybe a hit to the deck directly, or possibly a hit to Piccolo New Ruler, which is essentially an extra overwhelm that decks like Red Broly and King Vegeta can just play per turn. It's kind of insane, but yeah, a lot of people are afraid this deck is going to rise to dominance because of the fact that a lot of the other aggro decks were addressed and Red Broly was not. I'm not totally convinced of that. I do still think there are decks that can check Red Broly, although Mecha Frieza was heavily nerfed, and that deck was a pretty good check to Red Broly. But I do think there still exists other checks to Red Broly in the format, but I definitely think it's going to be a good red deck to play. So if you guys like Red Broly, kind of miss the deck being in the format, I do think it's a good pick going into the meta. And Jiren Blind Destruction, my thoughts on this deck have really flip-flopped since the beginning of my set 14 testing. I kind of thought it was the worst red deck coming out of set 14, but now I'm starting to think it's the best. Like, I've had a lot of success with it in testing. It seems really strong. I also think Starter Deck Vegeta is really good, but as just like red good stuff deck, I kind of think King Vegeta is just better because of the ability to just play, you know, switching gears for free and the one drop Vegeta for free. I think those cards are just really strong and complement red good stuff really well. But yeah, Jiren, for the archetype that it plays, I think is going to be another pretty solid red mid-range deck. So if you guys are a big fan of Jiren, you guys should be happy about that. Going into blue, I really think the only contenders for blue are Baby and Soul Striker. Baby has been an incredible force since the, you know, I guess middle, maybe start of set 13 format. It's always been a thing, and it's always been one of those decks that can pretty much answer everything. But it's just in the past like format or two that it's really started to become a pester, really annoying deck that a lot of people have to deal with. It's just at a lot of tournaments, it does very well. It's a strong deck. Again, it can pretty much answer anything. But Soul Striker has kind of risen up to dominance pretty quickly at the end of set 13 format there, adopting the Galactic Buster engine, adopting the Skillless Gohan engine, both to very successful degrees. Even some red-blue Soul Striker decks have been doing pretty well, but Soul Striker only gets more toys to play with in set 14. Tapion Calamity Challenger, Goku Calamity Challenger. There's a lot of really good cards that Soul Striker can play. None of the blue archetypes in set 14 are unfortunately that good. I do think that maybe SS3 Reboot has the potential to do some stuff in this format. It could be okay, but I think realistically it's going to be a worse Baby, which sounds crazy because, you know, you're untapping 3 energy per turn, so theoretically you can do offensive stuff and then sit back and do things defensively. But S3 Reboot has a slew of its own problems, like hand control, like crit, like hyper aggro, where Baby can deal with that just a little bit better because Baby is not really like critting his own life to ramp or anything like that. I feel like at the beginning of every format, people mess around with SS3 Reboot because in theory it sounds broken, but it just ends up not working out too well, at least from what I've seen from you know, the past several formats. But yeah, blue, this is pretty much what you guys are looking at for the top tier competitive play. I don't really think much else in blue even stands close to these guys, except again for maybe SS3 Reboot. For yellow, we got a few options here. So Mecha Frieza got nerfed pretty significantly. The banned Universe 9 Assemble is going to be a big power nerf for Mecha Frieza. I still think it's playable though. I've seen a lot of people experimenting with the We Are World Champion extra card package, where you play some sort of Kid Goku and that extra card on the World Champion, so you're able to draw 2 cards that way. It does like kind of turn into a combo deck where you need to see very specific cards early on to get your draws going, and if you don't see that, you could be in pretty big trouble. I've also seen other builds that just play good yellow stuff and don't really try to go for the ginormous hand size anymore. They just try to, you know, sit on the fact they can do Spirit Cannon for free, Vegeta's Final Flash for free. Vegeta's Final Flash for free is still going to be a really insane thing that Mecha Frieza will have going for it, but I do think it's going to be significantly weaker with that. Now, this is a personal pick of mine, of course. You guys know me. I love the Kid Gohan deck. I think it's really good. I think that, you know, it's going to be very similar to what at least old Mecha wanted to do in a lot of ways, where Mecha and Kid Gohan are going to want to abuse the blue-yellow package with Violent Rush Bojack using Aegis, stuff like that. But Kid Gohan is going to inherently draw a much bigger hand than Mecha Frieza more consistently. And why I say more consistently is because, again, Mecha can draw big hands with certain like extra card packages like I'm a World Champion, or maybe even Kefla's Fury if you choose to tech it. But you're going to have to draw those cards in that deck to get the really big hand sizes. Kid Gohan can just do it pretty much inherently. You've got to see one skillless card by like turn 3 to really turn your deck's draw engine on, but even if you don't draw it, your deck will still draw a lot. So I think that Kid Gohan is going to be a really good blue-yellow deck. And for mono yellow decks, I think that Hellboy is going to be really strong. It just has a very unique thing to the archetype. I think most yellow decks are just better off blue yellow unless the mono yellow engine that the deck is meant to be played with is really good. And I do think Hellboy's engine is really good. He plays battle cards for very cheap. He's got some built-in removal, and of course the Return of the Dragon Fist boss monster is going to be a really solid boss monster for just about any yellow deck. So I think that's going to be pretty good as far as yellow goes. And then finally, guys, we'll talk about green. Of course, we leave green for last because it has been the most lacking color in the recent history of Dragon Ball Super. King Cold is going to be a fine deck. I don't think it's going to be over the top amazing or anything. What King Cold does very well is it punishes decks that self-awaken rather quickly, because it's swinging on you with big double strikes and a big triple strike from the unison. So if you're taking yourself down to 4 life, like turn 2, turn 3, King Cold can punish that. It kind of forces you to negate or out combo attacks pretty early on. That's why I think it's like got a pretty decent spot in the meta. I don't think it's going to be able to run the meta because it, you know, punishes strategies like that. It doesn't exactly set the pace of a meta, but it's not bad. Soul Surge, I do think is a very good hand control deck. So I wouldn't say this is like, you know, green dumpster trash, right? I would say that if you want to play green, you want to play hand control, be true to green's roots, I think you can play with Soul Surge and you'll feel pretty good about it. 2 decks that I'll give you guys a little bit of hope for. I'm not saying they're going to be top dog meta or anything. They might be rogue at best, but I do have hope for Tien Shinhan and Videl. I've been a big champion for Tien ever since it came out in Evolution Booster. It just has access to really good hand control cards like the 1-drop green Goku from the World Tournament set. And just going into that and then going into the Bardock Unison is going to take a lot of cards out of your opponent's hand pretty quickly. So I do like that about the deck. Again, not saying it's like the best hand control deck. Soul Surge is definitely better, but I do like Tien for those reasons. And Videl, I still haven't felt like I've cracked Videl yet. I do like the fact that it draws a lot of cards. Decks like that always have some sort of potential. It's just kind of finding the way for Videl to put on meaningful pressure and end games. That's what I'm still trying to work on. But again, I do like the fact that it draws a lot of cards, so I do think there is some potential in that fact. But anyways, guys, those are my top meta picks going into set 14. Of course, I want to know in the comments below what you guys think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.